Hey everybody, welcome to another World of Warships replay, and this one is in the Izumo, and we are on Fault Line. Now this match turned out to be a bit of an interesting one, because of some pretty serious mistakes on my part. Nothing unusual there then. And it also demonstrates one of the problems with getting to close range with the Izumo. Right away I decide to head towards the west, which is usually where I take a battleship on this map. You can sometimes head towards the east, but it's a little risky, especially with the enemy having 2 destroyers and some cruisers there. The Atlanta has torpedoes, as does the Myoko. In fact, they don't have an Atlanta, they have a Cleveland. It's us that's got the Atlanta. So they have only 1 cruiser with torps, but they also have the 2 destroyers. Looks like our cruisers are heading there anyway, and I predicted correctly in this case that the majority of the enemy battleships would come west anyway, and so we would need all the firepower we could get to try and fight them. As you can see, I was running a lot of signal flags on my Izumo. In fact, I think I had something like 6 sets on there, which is close to maximum. You can fit a maximum of 8 signal flags to any given ship. One of the enemy Izumos is spotted out in the open water, so I get some quick shots off. The enemy Colorado returns fire, but most of his shells fall short. My own shells find their mark, at least 4 of them do. But 4 out of 9 at this range isn't too bad, and they did actually do some damage. Not a huge amount, but enough to be noticed. I take some damage myself, though not as much as I dealt to my counterpart on the enemy team. You can see one of the enemy destroyers making a beeline for the central cat. Not really a big surprise there. I'm going to give him a wide berth and take shots at the North Carolina as it comes out around this island. There are some bombers hanging around, but they aren't dangerously close just yet. I get some massive hits on the North Carolina, but take some myself.
The enemy team has taken the lead.
And now we have bombers incoming. Once again I lose a turret. This happens a lot in the Izumo, especially at closer ranges. These guys are just punching shells through my belt and into the turrets. Dive bombers are coming in closer, torp bombers are swinging out to the side. It looks like the enemy carrier is trying to attack simultaneously with both squadrons, which is a good move. I use the dive bombers to distract the AA and then the torpedo bombers to come in and deliver the knockout punch. But in this case, it looks like the number of battleships here, as well as cruisers, has frightened him away. He doesn't want to lose all his aircraft to us, and so he diverts them away. Enemy Cleveland rolls out from the channel here. I get a couple hits in, not very big ones, but he's now exposed to my teammates and gets absolutely demolished by the guy next to me. The bombers come in now and come straight into a wall of solid anti-aircraft fire from myself and the North Carolina, as well as a cruiser behind us. I kind of accidentally squeeze the North Carolina into a beach there, and then in my attempt to evade the Farragut's torpedo spread, I take one, but I then head straight into an island and beach myself really badly. There it goes. Well, looks like I'm now a shore battery because I'm stuck fast and I can't get myself off of the ground. North Carolina's fared a little bit better, he can move at least. But for now, I'm going to have to just deal the best of what I can. My rearmost turret is masked by the turret in front of it, so I'm down to 2 functional turrets against this enemy Izumo, who is obligingly stopped right in the sweet spot for me to slam him through a citadel, which I promptly do. Now, as well as one of my 3 turrets being masked, most of my secondary guns are also masked by the island, if not by my ship itself, so I haven't got a lot of firepower going for me at the moment. What I do have is angle. The position I'm beached in makes it really hard for these enemy battleships to actually get good solid hits through my citadel. I do lose a turret, but as long as I'm able to triage the worst of the damage, I should be able to at least take one of these guys down. And it looks like it's going to be this Izumo who stopped in front of my guns, ate a lot of shells, and is now slowly backing away as if he thinks that's going to save him. Down he goes. Finished off by flooding, I think it was, from our aircraft carrier, perhaps fire. I wasn't really paying attention, to be quite honest. The enemy North Carolina begins a hard turn as I fire at him, and so my shells don't find their mark. The second enemy Izumo is about to unmask himself around the island, but I finally freed myself from the clutches of the shallows. Immediately I begin trying to turn to unmask my 3rd turret. In the meantime, I've only got 3 guns up, since that 3rd turret is masked and the 2nd one was knocked out. I get a single hit onto the stern of the New Mexico, but it bounces. The angle was just too bad. And now I push my ship forwards. Now I have no hit points. I'm down a turret. Really, I should have just kept reversing and pulled around behind the island, waited for my repair to come back up, and then use it. Instead, I decided I would just charge into the middle of everything and do as much damage as I possibly could before getting blown up. Which is more fun, to be quite honest. First round of hits on the Colorado do nothing. Second, though, put some pretty good damage on him. Try and angle myself to bounce the majority of the North Carolina's incoming shells. Unfortunately, it instead gets all 3 of my main turrets knocked out. The remaining 2 go down. All I have left now are my secondaries, and so I decide to try and just cruise close enough to put them to use. Firing from both sides of my ship, I'm actually able to set the enemy Izumo on fire, and in a moment here, he's going to burn to death because of it. Down he goes. I get taken out as well. But how about that? I was able to claim a battleship with my secondary guns after my primaries are all knocked out. But this demonstrates one of the serious problems with the all turrets forward design, and particularly the way that the turrets are designed on the Izumo. You really do run into a lot of problems where at closer ranges in particular you can potentially lose 2 or 3 of your turrets and have nothing left but secondaries. The other problem is, of course, that the rear turret faces backwards, and so unlike the Rodney and the Nelson, which can traverse their guns across the front and engage things to either side while moving towards them, or they should be able to when they are added to the game, the Izumo has to do what the Japanese cruisers do and traverse that rear turret all the way around, and 270 degrees of traverse takes a long time, so you can't rely on being able to drive towards people snaking around firing shots at them. That's going to be pretty much the preserve of the Nelson once it's added to the game. And here we can see a stock New Mexico. This is what the New Mexico actually looks like without an upgraded hull, with the old lattice masts, the very minimal superstructure. It's kind of odd seeing, you know, a clipper bow and I don't know, just the triple turrets. They look surprisingly modern with the lattice masts and the very, very simple bridge you've got there. Of course, once it's upgraded, the New Mexico starts to look more like a modern battleship with a built-up superstructure, a hell of a lot more anti-aircraft defense, and no more lattice masts. The enemy currently hold the majority of the points, but our team outnumber them and have more hit points to play with. So at the moment this match could really go either way. Here's what the Essex looks like. This is the Tier 9 US carrier. It used to be Tier 10 I think, but it was bumped down. The Tier 10 is going to be the Midway. Tier 7 Japanese cruiser Myoko here. This used to be a Tier 8 before people discovered that the Mogami was actually better than it. So it was bumped down to 7, Mogami is taken up to 8, and it's a pretty good swap. Unfortunately for him, he wasn't paying enough attention to the incoming bombers, and so the torps get him. Had he turned to his left, probably most of those wouldn't have even fused because they would be inside their arming range. However, he is able to take down a number of the bombers as they head back towards their home carrier, and the enemy are now down to 2 battleships. Myoko, like most Japanese cruisers, has torpedoes. 4 triple tubes, I believe. 2 sets of triples on each side. And this guy launched 2 spreads before he was taken down. And you can actually see there between the 2 funnels the pontoons for a float plane stored. I think if you look around the Myoko you can actually see the wings as well. So it does have a scout all folded up and taken apart and ready to be put back together and launched, as well as the actual plane sitting on the catapult. So here we see a fully upgraded New Mexico. This is what it looks like in its World War II configuration. Much unlike its original configuration, it's quite a big difference. If it wasn't for the turret layout and the shape of the hull, you probably wouldn't even recognize it as the same ship. Looking at the American and Japanese ships, you can very clearly see the different design philosophies. The Americans go for fuller, more enclosed superstructures, kind of similar to the British, whereas the Japanese just build giant fucking pagoda masts, which I quite like the looks of, to be honest. The Japanese ships also tend to have quite heavy secondary armament, as you can see running all along the sides there, particularly the earlier battleships. The later battleships mounted them mostly in turrets along the sides of the superstructure, as you see on Izumo and Yamato, but on the earlier ships they were built into casemates on the hull. And the Nagato, for what it's worth, is one of the best brawling ships in the game, purely because it has so many secondaries. Once it gets into close range, it just murders everything. And so that's something to watch out for. When you are engaging Japanese battleships, do not get close if you can help it. Particularly in a destroyer, because they'll just tear you apart. Unfortunately, he manages to beach himself. There's been a lot of that going around this match. The other Nagato on our team is rather badly beaten up.
Our victory is in sight.
And once again, you can just see the enormous contrast between the two New Mexicos. Our teams managed to come back to capture all 3 points and have shepherded the 2 remaining enemy ships into the far northwest corner of the map. The Lexington still has most of his hit points, but he's a carrier. He's not going to survive very long once he's being fired upon, and the battleship is nearly dead. Down he goes to a blind shot from our New Mexico. It's just the Lex left now, but we're just about to pick up a win on points. And so it looks like he may well get away without being sunk this match. And there goes the anti-aircraft fire that the American ships are very, very, very distinguished by, particularly the medium to high tiers. Lower tiers, they don't really have much, but then again, nobody does.